Meta.
What is meta?
Thanks to Meta, we know that this is Meta.
But is it meta?
I don't know, it's upside down. Aha! This is Meta.
You need outside knowledge to get this joke.
Alright, so I think it's appropriate that we did this episode after the last one because we ended that one talking about Dota. And Dota, Dota 2, League of Legends, like those style of games really do have the heaviest amount of what we refer to as metagaming going on. And essentially metagaming at its core is exactly as the joke said, you require outside knowledge to get this.
Yeah. Now, do we feel like we have a solid definition of meta, or because I feel like let's get some ground rules here set in before we proceed.
Well, I think...
Where's my phone?
Alright, well, while you're doing that, I think one of the big things about meta, especially when we talk about video games, is this is a bit of a prefix. Meta unto itself may have a definition, but when we gamers talk about the meta, we're usually talking about the meta game.
Yes, it does change from game to game, but there are also things about, because that particular game has a meta, that is similar to all the other games that also have a meta.
Yeah.
Now, I think pretty much all games in some way will have a meta. Some meta is stronger than other meta. It depends on how complicated or how nuanced the game is.
Every game, especially online versus ones, will have a player base that generally gets a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and with that they will bring new ways of looking at stuff. For example, you could have a particular kind of unit in a real-time strategy game. And, you can have this particular upgrade, which, yeah, it's a nice upgrade, but why would you use it? Until someone discovers that by using this upgrade, it changes a particular keyword. So now when these units with this upgrade get affected by this commander power, they are now behaving in an entirely different way, as opposed to swapping out for what would seem like a more effective upgrade. And I think the biggest thing when it comes to the meta is that people get beaten over the head with it. Oh god, you're playing anti-mage, and you haven't gotten a battle fury?
GG, we lost.
Yeah.
Surrender. Or just wait in the fountain and die, which is the Dota 2 version of surrendering. This I looked up Urban Dictionary just to find a definition of meta, and this is probably the best one. When you create new layers of abstraction, which is something that's intangible that you have to use your imagination or your third eye to contemplate or consider, between the thing or event, you are becoming more meta. For example, a footnote that is needed to explain another footnote is meta. The problem with being meta is that you add sufficient layers of abstraction or complexity between the original event and the convenient abstractions you create to clarify or explain it. You eventually lose all connection to the original. Generally, you need no more than 2 or 3 levels in writing. Too much meta in your writing leads to meta fog. In writing, this means your writing sucks. Man, I need notes to explain the notes to my notes for the thesis. That's very meta. Perhaps I should rewrite it. By Charles Hoffman, August 29th, 2010. I think they're both covers what are the strengths and what are the drawbacks to having a meta in something. Using Dota 2 as an example, I'm in a ranked match, and I don't know anybody else on my team, but I need to rely on these people to win the game. We all are conscious of the meta, and so we are able to form a team based off what we know to be the strongest tactics or the most effective characters, and therefore our combined power has a much better chance of achieving victory than if we were to all bring our own ideas to the table and have there be this level of confusion where I'm not sure what he's doing, he's not sure what I'm doing. We don't get each other. We don't trust each other. We can't trust each other because we don't know each other.
Regrettably, online gaming and mics just don't seem to be as synonymous as I think we'd all like.
Well, because we're playing Dota 2 and we're in the English server, naturally half the people we talk to don't speak English.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. Perfect sense, of course. Why has this not been fixed yet? I don't understand.
Well, I think you need some kind of language literary test every time you want to sign up for a particular server.
I think that's a good idea. Or doesn't South America have a server? They have a server, don't they? I never looked because I'm an English speaker and I'm on an English-speaking server.
Well, Canada doesn't have their own server. I think it's just East and West.
We're part of the Americas, so To me, I never complain about having a Canadian-only server, and quite frankly, there's going to be 6 of us queuing to play, so I don't think it's going to work out all that well, anyways. But so there's the benefits to the meta, but the drawback to the meta is that in a way it actually will stifle player discovery, player creativity, because a lot of the people who are playing Dota 2 right now are younger. I'm 25. I'm sorry, 24. I'm about to be 25. Probably by the time this video goes up, you're 25 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Probably be 26 by the time this video goes up, actually.
but generally the Dota base, at least in my experience, having met a lot of these people on lands, are still in university. They're still not kids, but they are still younger, and because they're still gathering a taste for things, it's easy to watch a lot of what the pro players are doing and pick up on their tactics and strategies. And because they're pros and they're being paid to play the game, you can't help but trust their opinion on things and their strategies, and that meta ends up bleeding into the rest of the gameplay, and everybody else is doing that. Right now, there are maybe 12 heroes out of a potential 100-plus hero pool that are being picked at least 50% of matches.
And that unto itself is a bit ridiculous, because professional play, especially for a game like Dota, just has a different pacing than regular play. I believe it was Nerf Now, who did a comic just making fun of other things, had it perfectly fit when they had a Dota player just in fencing outfit, like fully gear, like 3, 2, 1, blast it! 3, 2, 1, blast it! And like that is what they're doing in competitive play. Everything in competitive play is about reducing all the numbers to get like the maximum amount of gold generation versus time versus whatever stuff. And if you look at a standard pub match, you've got about twice as many deaths in the first 20 minutes than you do in the average like pro game. Obviously there are exceptions to that. I remember watching a particular game in the internationals, it just seemed incredibly bloody. But
Yeah.
because of that,
a lot of the last matches in like the final bouts were over in less than 20 minutes because they didn't even do what pro players typically did. They just tried to rush and fight it out as quickly as they could, and they lost as a result of that.
Ram Dota to join the Rat Dota and the Turtle Dota.
So when I was reading the Reddit page to see what the general opinion was on the current patch, a lot of people were saying that we're hoping that this meta gets patched out and some of the characters get nerfed. And nerfing is, for those of you who don't know, for some reason, it's you take something that's powerful, arguably a little too powerful, and you make it weaker. And
similar to the nerf material that sponge-like stuff used to shoot darts at each other.
Yes, because if I got shot by a real bullet, it would hurt a lot more than by a nerf bullet.
On the other hand, I
could
beat him over the head with a nerf bat all day, and he barely notices.
Don't get any ideas. I mean, at the very least, give me something to defend myself with. Oh, he's got the idea. Okay. So one of the things that bothers me about nerfing something, and I'm trying to stay on track as much as I possibly can, but there's just so much to this subject. I don't even think we're going to be under an hour.
It branches out into other things.
It does.
I mean, even if you look at the idea of a nerf, is it actually a nerf or is it a balance change? Is it we're trying to run this character on the ground so people stop picking him?
Ideally, it's supposed to be a balance change, and
it doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah, and one of the things I respected about Riot is that whenever they're balancing or nerfing a character, they usually put out a video to explain some of their choices. And they were very wise to use terms like bring this character in line with the other characters. So what's happening is a character that is typically overpowered is getting his power reduced, but is now being perceived as weaker and is less useful overall. An example of this was Spiritbreaker, who for a long time was incredibly powerful and almost ruined people's matches whenever he showed up. He got hit a little bit. Now we don't see him at all, but he's still viable. He still needs to be put into the right composition. He's not a useless hero.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about Spiritbreaker back when we were in the beta is that he became magic immune whenever using Charge Darkness. Okay, quickly speaking, Charge Darkness allows him to go anywhere on the map, or allows him to charge a single target anywhere on the map as long as he had vision on them when he cast the ability. And magic immune means can't be stunned, slowed, or affected by traditional abilities. Like the ones that go through is a lot shorter list than the ones that don't.
Yeah.
And that meant that you essentially could charge willy-nilly at casters right through enemy teams. You could basically go all over the damn place because you couldn't get stopped. People had to Yule themselves or somehow affect themselves to get out of it.
Yeah.
Now that
When he
he's
said Yule, he meant to use this item that casts a cyclone that throws your character up into the air, which would stop the charge.
Are we getting meta yet?
Very.
But now that he's no longer magic immune, I still think he's a very valuable person, but you can't go charging willy-nilly. You have to make sure you've got tree cover for as much of your charge as possible. You have to be very careful of the lines you're crossing along the map. And, it is possible for fast reaction to stop someone right before they hit you.
After this, I probably need to take off and meet with some friends after.
Okay.
Some friends, he's been under a lot of stress lately, so we promised we'd get together.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean,
It's a gigantic drill. For the record, I am not editing that out. I am not editing that out.
well, I want to speed up that section.
But that was a good break. So
Yeah.
I want to backtrack a little bit because I want to offer a suggestion as to why we even bother having a meta. And I wanted to track from Dota 2 for a little bit. We'll come back to that. No, Lord knows we'll come back to it.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to use Street Fighter as an example of this. I'm sure you know Street Fighter.
Yeah.
And do you know Dan Hibiki?
Yes, this goes back to the whole idea of tier lists.
It does go into tier lists.
Dan Hibiki is essentially the joke character.
Yeah.
No one picks him. No one likes him. I think we've seen maybe one of them at a tournament level because they were trying to troll their opponent, and then he never showed up again. I think he may have actually won that, but when you're at the absolute bottom bracket tier, working your way up, like you can afford to do something stupid like that at the bottom.
Now,
You also trained Baracus.
the tier list is designed to give players an idea of who are the best characters to pick based off their powers and abilities and how easy it is for the player to apply skill. Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5, you get to whatever the lowest tier list is, and that's where Dan Hibiki is.
He was intentionally put there.
Yes, and that's what makes Dan Hibiki an exception to the rule, and kind of a meta commentary on the whole tier list in general is that if somebody were to pick this character, it's because they know he's bad, and they want to prove how much better they are as a player by beating the crap out of you with this character. But
with the guy in the pink outfit.
With the guy in the pink outfit whose Hadouken can go like that far. That's just not how you it's not how you Hadouken. It's not a Hadouken.
But did he forget the forward at the end of the quarter rotation?
But why would somebody pick someone in the tier 1 list? And the reason why is because there is this sort of balancing scale between the character's inherent power or potential power and the amount of necessary skill the player has to apply in order to exert that amount of power. Now, if you take somebody who is very high on the tier list, the player doesn't have to apply as much skill, not to say that the player doesn't have to be skilled at all, but he doesn't need to, quote-unquote, work as hard in order to get the optimal performance out of the top-tier character. If you were to pick a character on the lower tier, you can still win. Objectively speaking, you can still reduce the enemy's health pool to 0 or reduce his life meter to 0 or whatever metric you're using. The problem is you need to apply more skill because your character is inherently less powerful than the characters on the top tier list. In Street Fighter, I would say that it's a little bit more overall balanced because it is designed as a 2D fighter. But there's another game that I'm a huge fan of. You might know it. It's called Smash Brothers. And the competitive Smash Brothers scene is something that I never got into because I don't understand why the scene is the way it is. In Smash Brothers competitive play, it's one-on-one Final Destination, which has pretty much all the decoration that this table has, sans the coffee cups, the water in the cups, and the coasters. It's just flat. And what happens is a tier list forms based off the characters in that are great in a one-on-one fight. On the top of the tier list, you have somebody like Meta Knight in Smash Bros. Brawl, and probably in the new one. You have Falco, you have Sheik, you have Fox, you have Marth. These are all characters that are designed to be much more effective at one-on-one fights than they are in a group setting. Yeah. Now, they're not weak in a group setting, but in a four-player brawl, when you're playing one of these characters, you need to think about who you're going after in specific, and then try to avoid being attacked by the other two. There are other characters in Smash Brothers, like Bowser or Wario or the heavy characters, who are great at just bringing Pain Train and just being Sauron in Lord of the Rings, swinging their mace everywhere. In a one-on-one setting, they don't work as well. So the thing that boggles my mind is, why is competitive Smash Brothers based off metrics that exclude 95% of the stages and almost 70% of the characters? That doesn't represent Smash Brothers anymore.
Exactly. One of my favorite characters to play is Pikachu, and Pikachu is a very effective caster / hit and runner. So he, or she, depending on how you want to think about it, requires...
I'm going with he.
Okay, let's go with he. Requires decent amount of space, some amount of aerial traction, because they need to hit and run. They need to, get their spells in proper order in order to get the opponent. And this just doesn't work as well on Final Destination. I mean, even, I like the simpler maps, but I even like the ones that are just flat and then have one or two platforms up here, because now you're forcing your enemies to jump, and this means I can, as Kirby, stone morph and crush you. It means as Pikachu, I can do the lightning trick from when he's on a different platform. As Bowser, I can carefully time up a spinning shell ability. And, that really is what it was primarily designed and made for, and that is how characters are better balanced. Even looking at the new one, the big thing I keep saying again and again is I hate Little Mac, because Little Mac's weakness is he's got horrible air mechanics. Well, okay, now you've pretty much shut down, he's going to be the #1 banned person on Final Destination.
Pretty much.
There's no reason to go in the air in Final Destination, and once you eliminate the air, so many characters just fall off the roster, and it kills the overall way it works. And hell, I like items; they're a little fun bonus thing, like holy shit, beams are thrown.
Yeah, there is the element of random chance, but I mean, even in Dota 2, which is played competitively for millions of dollars, there is random elements in that too. So random isn't necessarily something that shouldn't exist, although the idea was to eliminate as much of that randomness as possible. But my point is that randomness is part of the game.
Yeah. I mean, you can even look at Dota 2. You can have a character whose stun hits for a random duration, who pulls people for a random distance, who can have a chance of hitting people for extra damage.
Yeah. When I one of the things that I respect about the Smash Bros. Community is that some of them just sat around and bitched about the different changes in, say, Smash Brothers Brawl when they eliminated the wave dashing mechanic, which was not a developer-intended mechanic. It was a player-discovered mechanic. And if I'm a developer and if a player discovers something that I didn't want in the game, I'm probably going to eliminate it because it was not part of my intention. But anyways,
Force block cancel. Street Fighter had a weird trick called a force block cancel originally, and basically you were confusing the command input and resetting your character's stance, basically feinting your opponents and allowing you to chain combos a lot more effectively. I believe I might be thinking of a different kind of cancel, but
that reminds me of something. Hold on to that thought.
Yeah, but it was never meant to be in there, and it's something that I think they tried to create some kind of different mechanic to keep what force block cancel did alive. But ultimately, they couldn't let people keep doing the whole shuffle reset because it was changing the power balance. It was affecting characters in ways they were never supposed to be affected, and just affecting the playthrough in a way that they couldn't really fix because it was a bug.
Yeah. Well, again, back to what I was going to say real quick was in the Smash Bros. Community, they went and they made their own modification for it. It's called Project N, and they take some characters in Melee that weren't in Brawl, and they redesigned a lot of them so that they had all their old mechanics that worked in Melee, but they didn't have in Brawl. And okay, you don't like the way it is, make your own version. Great, perfect, fine by me.
Or just
But
play the original. I mean, there's a certain point where nostalgia goggles are nostalgia goggles.
yeah, I'll agree with that too. Although my argument has always been if the game is still good, I will still play it. But if
Exactly.
I'm playing to reminisce about things, so I'm only 24 goddamn years old. What am I have to reminisce about? These are the years that I'm supposed to be living now, so I can reminisce about those when I'm 70. Way off topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, the future. Now,
We probably hope we'll have more sex by then.
well, you said that aloud, so now you'll never have it.
Mm.
Oh man,
Correct.
we stated the fact that as men we want to have sex. We couldn't possibly have it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not like we're women.
Ah, ooh. Okay, opening up the comment section on this one. Fucking bring it. All right, now let's move on to another game that I looked into that I played for about a year and a half that I really liked, and I wish that I could have gone into it competitively. But when I looked at the competitive scene, I checked out Team Fortress 2. Now,
Mm.
Team Fortress 2 is another example of a competitive scene where much of the game is eliminated in order to create the meta game. Now, Team Fortress 2, this is probably a little different now because last I looked into this, it was a couple of years ago. But it was a group of 6 on 6, and it was 2 soldiers, a medic, a demo man, and a scout. And there was very little room for changing the team dynamic.
Which, I mean, that eliminates most of the classes I like to play. I mean, even I believe right now in the competitive scene, I would say to you, the people in the future, the competitive scene is probably still not going to have a spy. I mean, the spy is one of the greatest villains in all of video gaming history. He's controlled by another player. He looks like your allies. He stabbed you in the back. He got away with it. It really comes down to he is this. And again, like, why is this so influential, so amazing guy just somehow missing from competitive play? I mean,
He's
so,
part of Team Fortress 2. He's part
yeah.
of the way the game was
Sniper's
designed.
part of Team Fortress 2.
Yeah, so I don't understand why a competitive version of Team Fortress 2 isn't a 9 on 9 where you have one of every class the way the game was intended. I don't understand why competitive Smash Brothers isn't a 4 on 4 the way the game is intended. I don't understand.
4 on 4?
Sorry, 4 person brawl,
Mm.
free for all. Maybe that's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Although I'd like to see 4 on 4. I imagine you need a really large
that would
level.
be
That'd be really cool.
Oh man, that would be chaotic though.
Oh, Hyrule Castle.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Like, you could have whole mini bouts of 3 person.
The
Like,
closest I ever got to that was in Melee. It would be 4 ice climbers, and we would only tap the A button, so everyone is just like killing each other with a hammer. It was a lot of fun. I don't. Yeah. So getting back to that point, I don't understand why we have to take away so much of what makes this game what it is, and I also don't understand why developers are reluctant to eliminate. And this is coming back to Dota 2 to eliminate player-discovered mechanics that A, break the context and reality of the game, B, can only possibly be discovered if you are lucky enough to see the loading screen that tells you to do it, or if a player tells you to do it. You should never be playing a game that is withholding information from you that you couldn't possibly discover while playing it, because you have to assume that to keep the game even, everyone is being given the same amount of information. If you start going meta about it and you start reading things online and you're learning little tricks and you take that into it, well, your friends probably are going to want to play with you for one, and then you're going to join this very small community of players who are determined to exploit this game as much as possible because they don't want to be perceived as scrubs.
I think when you mention that, especially in the context of Dota 2, just before we completely abandon Team Fortress 2, I really think the best Team Fortress 2 experience there is turns off all personal items because Vanilla TF2 is polished to a mirror shine And the idea that, oh, you're a heavy, quick, switch to the Totomskin build. What? Oh, you get the Totomskin guy and you combine it with this thing, and this gives you these kinds of bonuses. Like, I've got Natasha, thank you very much.
You're
I
a demolitions
like my
expert.
Natasha.
Quick, get your sword. What? Your sword.
Demo Knight, go!
I have a grenade launcher. Your sword. Are we playing chivalry? No, your sword.
The exception, of course, to that would probably be the old timey map, but there's no balance there. That's just for fun. But the thing I think of in Dota 2 when you mention stuff like that would probably be stacking. The idea of being able to like I actually have accidentally done like in the thousands of games or thousand or so games I played, I've accidentally done that once or twice where I'm just passing through the forest, things will follow me, and then they'll go back at the right number thing. But someone had to tell me at the 53-second mark, if you attack these things and then run away, so you pull them out of the camp, that times it so that the next guys spawn before they come in. I think there's that one camp that requires 55, but 53 will pretty much do 90% of the camps.
Yeah, as long as they're out at the minute mark, you get the new spawn. Now, in the context of the game world, the reason why they respawn in the first place is because the fog of war obscures your vision of it, and you assume that in this fog of war, these creeps are roaming around looking for a home, and they see that this is vacant, so they occupy it. But they assume that no one else is there because the other ones are dead. Now, when you pull the other ones out and the new ones come in and the other ones come back, it's like, well, this is our life now, and everyone just hangs out. Now, I would have kept I would keep the pulling, I would keep the stacking, but what I would do is, if one group of harpies come back and to see the mud golems are there, those two groups start fighting each other.
And if you don't get there, to finish them off, you've lost the gold and the experience, and the winners just stand there half beaten.
Yeah, and if you're on the other team and you recognize that's happening, then you can just stand close. You might not get the gold, but you can at least absorb some of the experience. The difference is it at the very least adds a little bit more character to it while not necessarily eliminating the mechanic.
It also prevents those insane, stacked 5 times little camps that the enemy then just comes through with their battle fury and cleans up. It's like, no, Spectre, I had this beautiful gift for you, and then they they came by and they broke it.
And depending on what character you're playing, it will also impact how other players will expect you to play him, whether or not you give in to that. You can be stubborn and you can play the game your own way, and hopefully you're good enough to not only beat the enemy team, but also in a way beat your own team in terms of just getting the most power and being able to wipe the floor with the rest of them. A great example of this is a character like Tinker, who has this very high threshold of map power, who can teleport all over the map, can cause a lot of chaos.
Well, when he gets the boots.
Yeah, when he gets his boots. He needs his items, but because that Tinker play is so ingrained in players' minds, they pretty much expect Tinker to do that. And if I were to play Tinker and I wouldn't want to do that, I'm going to get lashed out by my own teammates. Well, just let me play it my own way. No, you have to do it this way. And you know what? You might as well, because it is the best way to do it. That is the most effective strategy. That is the best way to get the impact out of Tinker.
The weird thing is getting Scepter on, getting into a bit more metagame. If you get Scepter on Tinker, he spontaneously becomes a really powerful team fighter because he can missile 4 people at once at extreme range. The range of the laser has doubled, and so all of a sudden he's now popping out abilities from a very safe distance away compared to most other heroes. And now he's in team fights raining homing rockets and lasers on people, and that's actually very powerful. But no, you're playing Tinker, wear your teleport boots, get over to the top tower, it needs pushing.
Yeah.
I tried Tinker a few times, know your enemy kind of thing, and it's always annoying when they say, Tinker, why aren't you split pushing? Why aren't you split pushing? I'm not split pushing because all our lanes have been pushed back into our base, and I can't teleport onto anything because I might as well walk for the teleport channeling time. I can't split push a lane that doesn't at least have, at least at the river.
Anything that you can blame in a match, right? They're blaming you.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, you are blaming those, but it just can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to say might be a little bit more towards a developer and less to a player, because at this point, if half the or 90% of the Dota 2 player base isn't getting their comments ready to tell us how much of an idiot we are. Um, these games are moving towards sport territory. Now,
Finally.
I've played some sports, not a lot, but know the enemy kind of thing. And in a game of soccer, I am supposed to kick the ball into the net. But I have hands. And if I were to grab the ball and I were to start using my hands, immediately someone would stop playing the game and say, whoa, that's a penalty. That is a handball. Give us the ball. You can't do that. And there are other examples of things that you can't do in a game of soccer that would result in a penalty. In a game of hockey, if you were to knock the puck from one end of the rink to the other end of the rink, oh my god, I'm actually keeping track of the terminology. I'm so impressed right now with myself. That's called icing, which apparently was integrated as a penalty because if someone were to skate all the way to the end of the rink, they would actually be going too fast and they'd crash. But point is, you can't do that.
I think one of the simpler ones would actually just be basketball. If you're dribbling and then you stop dribbling, you have to immediately throw the ball. You can't resume dribbling because that would be pretty much a feint or possibly a forced ball cancel.
Yeah. Now, if there were game developers in charge of making these sports, just be like, oh, yeah, part of the game now. Sure, part of the game. Feint and then keep playing. And then people who are getting into it be like, I have to do that? To play this game? It just seems so counterintuitive to what this game is supposed to be about. If you want these games to be treated as legitimate motorcycle drove by. If you want these games to be treated as legitimate sports, you have to impose restrictions. You have to impose regulations and rules. You have to make sure that the point of the game and the gameplay is clearly defined to the player base. Stop feeling the pressure of the players who want all these mechanics in the game. The only reason why they want it is because they know they can do it, and they know other players can't do it, and so they know that they're going to maintain the advantage just based off the knowledge pool.
Keeping in bad mechanics for the sake of nostalgia or because this was a bug in the first game, let's make it a feature in the second game, isn't necessarily doing a lot good for the game. Yes, it means that people from the first game can now translate over and all their favorite little meta tricks are still there, but now you've created an experience which in many ways doesn't obey its own rules. Now, some cases, these are little minor things, which, okay, that's not a huge whatever, like being able to stand on top of ward spots in Dota 2. Like, okay, I can blink up here, I can force stack her up here, or force staff up here. But, the stacking thing, and there's a bunch of other ones which, we're not really going to get into a list of all the little things in Dota, that just, again, it's like it's breaking its own rules in a way. And, I think it even goes back to the whole immersion thing. Like, you're now asking me to learn different rules outside of what we'd expect to be there.
Huh. I feel better now. Yeah, got that off my chest. What other changes would you? One of the changes that I would do to Dota 2, and this is a bit of a different discussion, but it's the way that and this ties into the player's understanding of the game. It's the way that some heroes are expected to play certain rules, and then other heroes are expected to play other rules. And this comes into the carry support dynamic, where a support player is expected to spend more time managing the flow of the game and relying more on their character's skills and less about amassing wealth to get items that they need to become more powerful as the game progresses. This is all done in service to the carry, who is hopefully getting enough power to be able to overwhelm the enemy and win the game.
Singularly on their own, without really needing the assistance of much other people.
Now, in Dota 2, there are plenty of items that you can choose from, and no matter what hero you are, you can always find the right item you need to contain any other situation. If somebody else is getting out of hand, but they're not immune to magic, you can hex them, and then you can either get away, or you can use that as an opportunity to unleash your own damage. You can then outplay them from there. On the other hand, if somebody is dealing a lot of magic damage to you, you can get magic immunity. There are always options that you have to come out on top, But the problem is, you are making yourself weaker over the course of the game, and somebody else is getting stronger over the course of the game, and you are now a constant target. And in League of Legends, it was designed from the ground up so that certain champions would fit certain roles, and that the group comes together as a team, and everyone plays their parts fine, and that makes sense. But I never saw Dota 2 as I mean, it's a team game, but I never saw it as these units have to give power to each other. I always saw it as everyone has to mass their own power and gather their own strength, and then work together as a unit to defeat the enemy.
The whole idea of playing Faceless Void, freezing people in Chrono, and then having either Jakiro come by and basically lay out Magma Pyre completely uninterrupted, or having Lich, come to the edge of your Chronosphere and just start tossing in a bunch of Chain Frosts.
Yeah.
It's really sort of an accidental synergy rather than an actual synergy. I mean, Faceless Void, a creature from between time and space, and he doesn't even have eyeballs, and depending what head you have, tentacles from mouth, working together with an undead mage who was thrown down supposedly bottomless well, and or a headless or a two-headed dragon. There clearly isn't, like, these people never even met each other. They don't even have responses for each other. But that, again, Faceless Void setting up stuff for other heroes who otherwise would have a penalty, like you'd have to have a lot of skill to set. Trying to land Skyrat's ultimate on somebody, unless they're slowed or stunned, is usually a huge skill endeavor of trying to get it properly calculated.
Yeah.
Or you can just have them frozen by Enigma. Okay, they're all getting sucked together. Perfect. Line up and, all right, that's a pentakill. We're done. Everyone go home.
There's no pentakills in Dota. How dare you? Pentakills League.
Oh.
It's the terminology. I remember back when I was transitioning from League to Dota 2, and I said champions in Dota 2. I got reported for that.
Yeah, that's how you started Flame War. I think they're more mature now. We're gonna go home and test that after this, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think the reason why we keep going back to Dota 2 is because it really is sort of the pinnacle of esports at the moment. I mean, yes, we have StarCraft 2, and StarCraft 2 matches are really fun to watch, although you really need to be able to control the camera yourself. I find letting the announcers do it's like, no, I want to look at it. Like, damn it, I'm trying to look at that.
StarCraft 2 is a well-balanced game.
Yeah.
I mean, everything has a place. Some things are clearly more powerful than others, but it's not like you can't play Terran in competitive. You can play whatever race you want.
Oh, you're serious. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well,
but
you can't do Terrans? Are you serious?
well, they're boring.
It's not a matter of being boring. It's a matter
wants to play them.
Hey,
Okay.
if money's on the line, you will play whatever it is you want.
The only thing I think Terrans have going for them is that their bases have jetpacks on them, so you can actually fly one of their bases into enemy territory, land it, and then upgrade it with an orbital cannon. And now you've got a base that can produce units and has a frickin' orbital cannon. But anyways, the reason why StarCraft 2 and Dota 2 and even League of Legends to an extent are all being looked at a lot in terms of metagaming and that kind of stuff is because they are on a professional level. It has hit a point where, okay, I'm no longer playing this for fun, I'm now playing this for moderate amounts of money. And if we win these moderate amounts of money, we can flip this and go into competitions for even more amounts of money.
Yeah.
We can flip that, etc., until you eventually reach the internationals. So a metagame is basically, and the meta itself is a result of basically what is maximum efficiency. How do I make as much gold as quickly as possible with as little risk to myself and my teammates?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of ways to make a ton of gold in that game that usually involves just throwing yourself headfirst to enemy territory and risking that you're going to get your arse kicked.
Yeah.
And fall back onto the meta because it is the most efficient in terms of number crunching. These are all video games. Even when you look at Call of Duty, there's number crunching going on beneath the surface, even though you don't see it. And I think some people who think of that game that way might have a bit of advantage because now they can just do all these mental calculations that all these racist 12-year-olds have no idea what they are. And the meta, unfortunately, once it becomes like it unto itself isn't a bad thing. But it doesn't really have as much a place in pub play and even, pub ranked play because the pacing is different. Therefore, you're shoving one kind of meta onto something which just doesn't want to take it. And then, And then you're also becoming very married to it. Like, the meta isn't begin all end all. It isn't, this is the only way you can play. I can be a heavy in TF2 and use the default minigun because it is, in fact, the most powerful minigun. I can be a medic in TF2 who runs around and heals people as they're injured. I don't need to surgically attach myself to the heavy or the soldier and make sure that they alone are a god. And in I think one of the funniest examples in League of Legends, Kale was a very low tier hero and may even still be a low tier champion in that game. And I knew somebody who picked her, went into a ranked match, and everybody's like, "Oh fuck, we got Kale, like good game, whatever." And he just dominated everybody. The fact that it was a low tier just meant his skill level elevated
Yeah.
her far above what she was supposed to be able to do. And meta, tier lists, all that stuff, it's not a bad, similar to the pirate code. It should be treated like guidelines,
Yeah.
not an actual do or die.
The last thing that I'll say about it, and then I think we get to wrap up, is that there is one metric more important than anything else that we've mentioned, and that was what you just said, and that was skill. When it comes down to it, if you just start playing a game and you immediately start adopting the meta, you are only adopting what is currently in vogue, but you are not gaining a fundamental understanding of how the game works. And your skill level will only go so high when the meta changes and all that knowledge that you accumulated is irrelevant. All that matters really is if you are good enough on the heroes that you play and you know when to play them and when not to play them. There are some characters that I have a reputation for being pretty good at on Dota 2, and I get drafted for those characters, and I don't even ask for it. People that I'm expecting to these are people that I know, that I play regularly with. I'm expecting them to draft me the typical support heroes or whatever, but they'll draft me characters that they know I'm good with because they know my skill surpasses what is currently popular. To an extent, I'm not that good, but it it is for me it is a step in the direction that I want to go as a player.
If your skill at video games is anywhere reminiscent of your skill in real life, I would go into battle with you anytime.
Oh, that's sweet, but I'm not having sex with you.
What?
I don't know. I was curious to see what your reaction to that would be. I'm gonna go now.
I'm gonna go with the double take.